Welcome to Taking Back Humanity, the podcast that's all about breaking free from the shackles of modern life and living on your own terms. If you're tired of the 9-to-5 grind, feeling unfulfilled, and wondering if there's more to life than the daily routine, then you've come to the right place. Welcome, my fellow humans, to another episode of Taking Back Humanity. I'm your host, Aaron Shade, and today I have a special guest, Chloe Dechow, who left her job in marketing to start her own coaching business supporting women in business. So welcome.
Thanks, Aaron. So excited to be on the show with you.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you here. Before we get into it, I have a quick question for you. This is a fun one that I like to ask people, but if you could travel anywhere in the world for free, where would it be?
Honestly, it's really hard to nail down a list because my travel list is incredibly long. But when you brought that up while we were prepping for our show today, Madagascar came to mind. There was one point in time I had Googled flights to see how much they cost, and they are insane to get to Madagascar. So I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I'd probably pick somewhere really expensive. I mean, I almost was in Antarctica. Thank you, pandemic, for that not happening. But that would definitely be high up there just because it is very expensive to not only get down there, but then to actually go to the continent itself. So why don't we just start off? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your story and your transition that you made from work to your coaching life.
Yeah, so I am the CEO and founder of Westhaven. That's where I focus on supporting aspiring and established women entrepreneurs with overcoming those fears that come into, it's like perfect topic for you, Aaron, because overcoming fears is huge for you too. Overcoming those fears of starting and growing their business. And then I worked in public relations and marketing for 10 years. And so what I do is I help them overcome a lot of those mindset challenges that spring up in entrepreneurship, and then help them figure out who they want to market towards, what they stand for, and how they want to communicate in a way that is both effective, but also really authentic to who they are.
Yeah, I truly believe that too. If you're starting a business and you're putting yourself out there, you really just need to bring your authentic self. You can't be like a robot. You can't be too salesy. It's just about being you and putting that energy into the world that you're behind what you're talking about and what you want to do. And that usually resonates very well with people more than just like, okay, I'm selling this thing. Will you buy it, please?
Yeah. You want, like, if you're going to start a business, like, you want to be passionate about what you're doing. And you also want it to feel like you're becoming more and more yourself, right? We grow up in a world where a lot of the people in our lives or the society defines who we are. And I think entrepreneurship is a really great way to like break out of that mold and be able to become who you really are. And that just naturally becomes a magnet for the right people.
Yeah, I feel totally the same way because I mean, just even thinking about my own personal journey through that, when I do find that thing that really just lights me up, it doesn't feel like work. It's just like it's your being, just you're putting out this energy into the world of who you truly are and what you can offer them. And if by helping other people, I feel like you get so much more satisfaction out of that than definitely reporting to a job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what motivated you to take this leap into what you're doing now with coaching?
Well, I wish it was like an easy question to answer, but I think with all things in life, when you do a major leap, there's a lot that goes into it. So I have always been what I like to call entre-curious in nature. So very interested in entrepreneurship. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my granddad was an immigrant and he started his own language school, was very, very successful, and ended up giving back a lot from a global perspective. So he always inspired me. I was like the woman who would be like traveling for work and for whatever reason would be drawn to picking up Entrepreneur magazine in the airport. And that was like my reading while I was flying. I didn't have a business. I didn't specifically have a plan to start a business. I was just always gravitating towards that kind of reading material. And I also like didn't feel like I had an original idea, which I know is a huge obstacle for a lot of people who are interested in entrepreneurship. So that kind of delayed me from taking the leap. And then life kind of happened, and the tallies of the pros and cons list to entrepreneurship started getting very uneven. And so I had a lot more pros than cons at this point in my life to jump into the entrepreneurship game. I had learned that I had like burned myself out in my career. And so I had been dealing with some health issues that were really stress related. So that was a big motivator. I also had 2 miscarriages during the pandemic and really grieved in isolation. Went on to have a healthy baby boy who's like the light of my life, but he also did spend some time in the NICU, which was really, really scary for us. And so I found myself in this place where I was quickly learning the challenges of being a working mom, having strived so hard in my career to get to the place where I was, and then also having tried so hard to have a family and realizing that like something had to give. Like I wanted to be able to pick my kid up from daycare if he was sick without any hesitation, be able to take care of myself, all those other things. And so really having ownership of my own time became a major driving force for me in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I feel the same way. So, I mean, with a job, you're just stuck there 8, 9, 10 hours sometimes per day and doing work that you may not even like doing. And then you feel like, okay, I got to do everything possible on the weekends, and you don't have much time during the evenings. It's like, get home, you're going to, take care of your kids or make dinner, do all the things in just that limited amount of time. And I feel like it really holds you back as a person to really express who you are as well, because you're just going in for a paycheck every week and doing work that could stress you out like crazy. I remember I was in corporate finance, and it's just like constant bombardment by all different people who all want different things. And it's just being your own boss. Yeah, it has its own challenges, but if you do it right, then you can create more time freedom in your life. And then that really just helps with, just being able to do the things that you want to do or do what you love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is huge. And speaking of travel, it opened up a world where I could travel without having to worry about a PTO request being approved. Like that was huge too. So definitely love that. I have more ownership over my time now.
Yeah, me too. So like just a few weeks ago, I was thinking, I haven't seen my cousin in 10 years, and she lives in New York, and that's kind of far. And I've never actually been to New York City. So you know what? I'll just book some flights and we'll just go. So that's definitely a benefit, because it's like, otherwise it's like, okay, well, I got to wait till like November, because that's when I have enough accrued PTO. And then I'll be able to take that trip.
Yeah, you get to live now.
Yeah, and live now and not live when you're like 65 and retired. I'd rather do it now than wait.
Yeah. I know it's almost like humorous to talk about now as an entrepreneur, because like that's not something you would ever even think about doing, is waiting until you're 65. But it's so real when you are in a 9-to-5 job. It's just waiting, all the waiting that you have to do.
Yeah, you don't even know if that 65 is even going to happen for sure. So things happen to people, and both my parents died very young. So I just like, I'm going to live now and I'm not going to wait until then.
Yeah, it sounds like it served almost like a wake-up call for you, similar to my situation, to live your life today.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So I would assume that through this process, you may have had some fears around what this might look like, or doubts or any of that before you really got into it.
Yeah, I think it's totally natural to have a lot of fears going into entrepreneurship. I find like when I talk to my own clients that the fears really, there's a lot of common themes, but the fears are really different and personal depending on someone's personality and their like personal circumstances. For me, one of the biggest fears was really like the fear of other people's opinions. Like that was a really big one for me, as feeling like, which I think at the core is really about a fear of being rejected by other people. And so, I've also met women who, the fear of making enough money to be able to support themselves is a big fear about going into entrepreneurship. There's a fear about being able to manage their time, fear of failure, and then also just like the uncertainty. There's so much uncertainty in entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned through the process was really just getting self-aware, I think has been really helpful for me around what are really the driving forces of these fears and how realistic are they? Fears are usually stemming from some sort of belief that we have. And I like to describe beliefs as like a thought that no longer realize you're thinking. It's just kind of like ingrained in us. And so getting like honest with yourself about your fears. And I had to take a step back and I had this fear of past coworkers like sitting around just like gossiping about me and what I'm doing, which really like in hindsight is really silly. And, they probably don't care that much. Or if they do, like, does it really matter what they think? No. How could I possibly prevent myself from going into the world and starting entrepreneurship and making an impact in women's lives just based on the fact that like maybe one or two people are not saying pleasant things to me or about me behind my back. And so I really had to like sit down and break down like, what is this fear? What's the driving force behind it? And also like, what evidence do I have to back that fear up? And usually you don't have any evidence to back up your fears. And so I worked really hard to reframe that and focus more on what was more important. And in this case, starting something that has a significant impact on the lives of women was far more important to me than worrying about what one or two people might think.
Yeah, I also think about imposter syndrome where you think, oh, who am I to do this thing? Do I really have the skills or can I do this business? And the reality is we all have something we can bring. We all have experience of something, whether that is through coaching that you're able to help other people or, through courses, memberships, any of that stuff. You can definitely make an impact in other people's lives. And I think that there's always somebody that you can help, no matter who you are.
Yeah. I see imposter syndrome as actually kind of a good thing because it means you care. It means you care that you're like, you understand like the power of your influence and you care about the work that you're doing and that you're actually like fulfilling on the promises that you're sharing with people. So I do think some imposter syndrome is actually healthy. It shows that you have integrity. And I also think like, regardless, especially with entrepreneurship, we feel like we need like the next degree and the next certification and like learning. And that can become a procrastination to getting out there into the world. And at the end of the day, we're all in the school of life. We've all been through experiences, and being able to lean into the fact that you have a unique experience that nobody else does, I think is a powerful realization that you can have when you start to explore entrepreneurship.
I think another thing that even myself, I was thinking when I first started our travel blog was that it's like, well, you have all these really famous travel bloggers out there. I'll never be like that person. Well, of course you're not. You are your own person and you bring something completely different than they do. And when I really do look at it, I'm like, well, this guy was a backpacker and he traveled around the world, and that's not how I travel. So it's just finding like, this is what my thoughts and feelings are about doing travel, and it's going to be completely different than theirs. And like I said, we all bring something different to the table for that.
Yeah. And your experience was probably more relatable to the right audience for you than his. So I think also, it's easy to compare yourself to other people's journeys. And we don't know like what goes on behind the scenes, like what mental battles they've had to overcome or are still fighting. And also, your unique experience is going to attract people who are interested in that story, that way of doing things. And I think that's actually really incredible.
Yeah. While starting your own business, what was really going through your head when you just took that leap?
Oh boy. I think there was a combination of like, am I absolutely totally insane? Was one of my thoughts. Am I crazy? And then the other was really around like this, like what I'm doing right now, working, we could call it a 9-to-5, but it was definitely more than a 9-to-5. Trying to be a new mom, trying to take care of myself, all the things we all have to try to figure out and do in society today. There's just like this huge part of me that was like, this is not sustainable. Something's got to give. And so I think it was this battle between like, am I crazy? And then I'm like, well, I'm also crazy if I stay where I am. So I have to figure something out.
Yeah, I think that my thoughts around when I quit my job back in 2019 and started traveling for 9 months, I mean, that was quite a leap right there. And just trying new experiences, seeing other cultures, just getting a really different picture and feel for the world, and overcoming a lot of fear I had around, oh, going to X country or this country, what do I need to be worried about going there? But I found that most places around the world felt more safe than a lot of cities in the US feel. So
Yeah.
it was just great to be out there and just meeting new people and having those experiences. And that really just reframed my thoughts about life, period. And coming back from that after that pandemic ruined our plans to continue traveling. We were really just hunkered down trying to figure ourselves out and figure out what we wanted to do next. And that's why we were just really focused on blogging at the time and creating online courses. And then we have a membership, and it's just all of that. And then even now I'm starting to pivot. So that's why I'm started this podcast. I'm doing something
Yeah.
a little different now. So just working towards helping other people be able to make that same transition from being in a 9 to 5 job, or even it doesn't have to be necessarily a 9 to 5 job, but any job that isn't really fulfilling them in life, and finding what their greater purpose is and making that what they do for the rest of their life, and making that into whatever business can sustain them. That's just amazing that you also are doing something like that and helping women in their own journeys and making it possible and giving them the support they need to overcome all of those fears and doubts and make progress and find what they love to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that our goals are pretty parallel to one another and helping people have a more fulfilling life through entrepreneurship. I don't think either of us are like trying to like drag people kicking and screaming to entrepreneurship. Like if they're not interested in it, that's totally okay. You do not have to be an entrepreneur to have a fulfilling life. But if you are interested in it, you've always been, quote unquote, entre-curious, it doesn't hurt to dip your toes in the water and explore it. And so being able to help people have the resources and the information they need to be able to dip their toes in the water or take the dive, whichever way works best for them, I think it's just a great way for people to be able to live life in a more intentional way.
Yeah, I feel like there probably are, I don't know, 80% of people that are out in the workforce, just like they're going through the motions, and it's just to earn money and go up the corporate ladder and all of that. But they're at something deep inside them saying there's something off here and it doesn't really feel right for me. And those are the people that I want to help find
Yeah.
a better path. And it's not always just about the money. I think it's just about the quality of your life. So it's not like, oh, I got to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and then I'll be happy. No, you're not any happier than anyone else is. It's just how you live your life is where the happiness comes. If that's spending more time with your family and not in an office, then that is wonderful. Or if you do want to travel, go do that. Or if you have other passions you want to pursue, you'll have the time to actually do them and not have to wait till that retirement date like I was talking about before. So just
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just money, it's the freedom to have a balanced, well-lived life. So that could be spending more time with your family, that could be traveling the world, that could be working part-time, like whatever it might, it's so personal. And I think a lot of people think that to become an entrepreneur, like you have to dive in, it has to be 100% commitment, you're going to be broke for two, like whatever stories they make up about what that can look like. And really, like you can do it however you feel works best for you. If that means creating a really long runway, meeting with a financial advisor to create some financial goals for yourself, whatever that might be, there are so many different ways to enter the entrepreneurship pool.
yeah, and it's not like you just got to go quit your job and just start doing it. You can be doing it while you're working. Sure, it's going to be rough for a little while, but it at least then you have, you're still earning money while you're figuring yourself out and getting to where you want to be. And then when you start seeing progress and you're able to like, oh, wow, I'm actually making some decent money off of my business, then it's like, okay, then you can put in your resignation and leave. But yeah, I just want to tell everybody that you don't really have to just jump right in, but you can take your time with it. learn from other people, surround yourself with others who also are on the same path as you, because then you can share ideas and find groups of people where you can just, meet regularly, maybe hold each other accountable for making some progress in your business and bouncing ideas off of each other. That really helps you expand beyond just yourself and just like researching online. You can actually talk to actual humans that have done work that is similar to yours. And I'm in two of those groups right now even, and it's very helpful to just have the support and the community around just becoming an entrepreneur and making a business that's sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. Community is huge in entrepreneurship. I think, especially for people who are used to having coworkers that they can bounce ideas off of or collaborate with. I think that was a big shift for me. I was so used to having such a like fantastic team to work with. And so one of the things I would advise to people who are entering entrepreneurship, like you said, is build out your network and connect with people. And it doesn't have to be for like a purpose other than connecting with people. It doesn't have to be a sales pitch. It doesn't have to be a quid pro quo situation. It can really just be about having authentic connection and supporting one another, which I think I've definitely felt very welcome into the entrepreneurship world. And I think it's a great way to have that coworker feel without having the other parts of having a 9 to 5 that you have to deal with.
Yeah. Can you come in on Saturday? I mean, I always think back to that Office Space movie, Yeah. No, I don't want to come in on Saturday. I'd rather be here talking to you on Saturday. So, have there been any unexpected benefits or rewards that you've received through this journey of becoming a coach?
Yeah, I think what was unexpected, I knew I was going to grow as a person, because how could you not when you put yourself out there? But I don't think I realized to the extent. Like, I just feel like more courageous, more intentional, and just like actively like working on, because at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, you are your business. Like, it doesn't matter how good everything else is. Like, if you're not, you're the foundation in which everything else can work. And so if you're not able to be honest with yourself and work on those limiting beliefs that are popping up, or like learning to like hear the inner critic and tell it to go away and focus on those things, I think that can make it really, really challenging in business. I know there's a quote out there that's like 90% of success is your mindset. And so really just, yeah, I don't think I realized to the extent that I would be challenged and yet take courageous leaps. And because of those courageous leaps and those courageous actions, feel more and more confident about who I am.
I think also as an entrepreneur, you're more able to take care of yourself and
Yes.
take care of your health. Because I remember even just when I was working, it's like, okay, after work, I want to go, maybe go out for drinks or anything like that, or eat bad food just because I'm trying to cope with the job.
Yeah.
And it's more detrimental to my health because not only am I stressed all day, and then that just makes me want to splurge on other things that aren't good for me. And that was kind of a constant that was throughout my entire career, that I would be like that. And I definitely, since I'm not doing that, I make sure that I take time to go exercise. I take time to cook foods that are good for me. I take time to find community around wherever I am. So that way I just have a social life as well. Because all these pieces, all these elements are critical to your health. And I didn't always have that opportunity because, again, I'd be working. Then I'd also have, back then I was commuting. I know there's a lot more remote work now, which is great. And you have a little more flexibility there. But when you're spending your time in traffic and then your work day, and then you have those few hours before you got to go to bed and then do it all over again the next day. And it's just, when you can design your life in a way where you have control, you're in the driver's seat, and you can decide, okay, well, if I want to take 4 days off, I can go do that. Maybe I have 3 really hard power days, and then I got 4 days where I can just take a trip somewhere, do whatever else I want to. That is just like the dream life, really.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me that like investing in yourself isn't just a financial thing. So yes, you should invest in professional development and networking and whatever it might be, but it's also, an energy investment to make sure you're getting more movement, to prioritize your mental health. And I think you're kind of forced to do that as an entrepreneur in the best of ways. And so, yeah, I think that's a really great benefit from taking this route.
Yeah. I mean, I felt comfortable dropping about $3,000 recently on a business program that is very powerful to help me grow within my own business, and then also be able to help others better, because it's truly about on the coaching side as well. So I'm going to be getting more familiar with that, but it's just, you do need to invest in yourself. And I think, oh, $3,000, that sounds like a lot, but think about how much a college degree costs these days.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, I didn't get that education as a kid, or when in high school, I was learning how to do trade work basically, or do corporate work while I was in school, and they never teach you really how to be an entrepreneur in school. So I'm now getting that teaching how to be an entrepreneur and how to, have the right messaging and all of that, all the stuff that goes with having that type of work.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think, I totally agree that they don't teach you how to be an entrepreneur in school. It seems like an overlooked option. And I also think, like, to become an entrepreneur and to learn how to be an entrepreneur, you just have to do it. Like, you can take as many degrees or certifications or whatever as you want, but at the end of the day, you have to put yourself out there, which I know is the best way to possibly learn. So taking that risk.
It's taking the risk. And then it's also knowing that when you do fail, it's not actually a failure. It's something that's teaching you something.
Yes.
You're learning from those experiences, like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that, but that helps me know what I can do that's even better than that the next time.
Yeah, there's a phrase called polarity creates clarity. And it's like, when you fail or when you go through a bad experience, it teaches you what you don't want, or who you don't want to be, or how you don't want to show up in the world. And in some ways, that's more valuable than knowing what you do want, because understanding the opposite effect kind of helps guide you in the right direction. So failure is not really failure. It just depends on how you look on it. Usually it's a way to really learn which direction you should be going in.
Yeah. And you also need to be out of your head too. You can't be like afraid of what's going to happen next, because you really don't know what's going to happen next. So why be afraid of it in the first place?
Yeah, it's like that. If you worry about something that hasn't happened yet, you're already suffering through the thing that hasn't happened yet.
Exactly.
And so you have to kind of pull yourself back and bring yourself back to reality, and not put yourself through something that you seriously don't need to do. I know a lot of us are wired to worry all the time because we're trying to protect ourselves. That's human nature. And yet at the same time, that doesn't actually serve us.
Yeah, it's like thinking, oh, what if I run out of money? Am I going to end up on the streets and in a sleeping bag or something? And like, no, you're going to be just fine. You'll figure it out.
Oh, yes, definitely. I hear all the time, like, women are terrified that they're going to bankrupt their families if they go into entrepreneurship. And I have to be like, well, are you bankrupting your family right now? Like, are you going bankrupt? No. Okay, well, it hasn't happened yet. So you have no evidence that you're going to bankrupt your family. What would be more beneficial is like, hey, I'm actually being intentional about my financial decisions by, working with a financial advisor or budgeting or whatever it might be. That's a more supportive message for yourself, and you can do something about it. You can't do something about this fear of going bankrupt. It doesn't do anything for you.
Yeah, things are going to happen. They're not always going to happen as you expect them to. And when you do face adversity of some sort, you just take another direction. You go. You still keep moving. You get up and keep moving forward. And you're going to get whacked down plenty, I'm sure. But there's that time where you don't. And it's like, wow, I'm actually doing this and I'm helping a lot of people and I'm really enjoying this process.
Yeah, so much success stems from just keeping going. Like, there's so many people who they hit a roadblock and then they stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then the people who are really successful, they hit the roadblock and they pick themselves back up. And then it's at the end of that failure where they hit that breakthrough and they end up being successful. And so one of the biggest things is just to keep picking yourself back up.
Yeah. I feel like every major life crisis that's happened, it's like I go through this phase where like, oh, everything feels like horrible right now, but then I always pull myself right back out of it and just like, you know what? That's I can still move forward. Everything's gonna be fine, and just get those thoughts out of your head and not just, I mean, acknowledge that you have that feeling, because
Yeah.
you can't just erase the fact that, oh, this happened and you feel miserable. Yeah, hold on to that, but at the same time you're just like, okay, well, yeah, I dropped flat on my face here, but I know I can come right back, and I've done it before, and I can keep doing it. And then once
Yeah.
you get past all of it, then you're like, okay, I'm here. Believe in that life that's over here, that you're not quite there yet, but live into that spot where you really want to be, and just put that energy there, and then you'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just what advice would you give to someone who's considering leaving their job to pursue business? Like,
Yeah, I think one of my biggest things is when you're feeling courageous, that's when you need to do whatever it is you want to do. So, courage is something that it's part of your intuition. And so when you hear it, that's usually your cue to do something about it. Otherwise, your mind tends to talk itself out of doing the things that you want to do because it wants to keep you safe and keep the status quo. So that doesn't mean like, oh, I'm going to quit my job on the spot. You don't have to do it that way, not unless you feel like you're in a dire situation. But it might be like, hey, I feel courageous about starting a side hustle, and you actually reach out to 3 or 4 people in your network and pitch an idea to them and see if they're interested or know somebody who might be. For me, one of the things that I had to do to overcome that fear of judgment was to put myself out there and tell people that I was starting a company. That was a huge thing for me to overcome. I was terrified of how people were going to react. And so there was this moment of complete courage that I was like, okay, I want to do this. And I, in that moment, stopped, typed up what I was going to share publicly, and posted it then and there, because I probably would have talked myself out of it if I had waited even an hour later. So really just follow, that's like an intuitive like hit when you feel that courage. So just follow that and you won't regret it on the back end, because taking courageous action leads to confidence.
yeah, I mean, staying still, you're not going to get anywhere. It's just taking those steps and that leap forward, that it's like, wow, I actually did this.
Yeah.
And that gives you momentum, and then you can keep going forward from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also a really big believer that you don't get what you don't ask for, especially in the business world. You know, if you want a raise or more PTO or whatever it is in the corporate world, like you have to fight for it. You have to advocate for yourself. And it's the same way in entrepreneurship. You know, if you want to make sales, if you want to get more customers, if you want to be on a podcast, like you don't get what you don't ask for. You have to ask for it. So I think often we just think things are going to happen, or people read our minds, and that's just not how it works. You have to go after what you want, and be really clear on what you want and need. And you might get a couple no's, but if you didn't ask at all, you wouldn't get any yeses. So I do think you need to ask for what you want as well in business.
Exactly. Couldn't have said that better myself. So, where can people find you and learn more about your work?
Yeah, your listeners can find me at westhavencoaching.com. Over there, you can take a look at my coaching programs and learn more about me and my background. And if anybody is interested in, getting a jumpstart on overcoming their fears around entrepreneurship, I do have a free workbook that they can download. That is at westhavencoaching.com/dismantle. And it's really around helping women dismantle some of the biggest fears I hear, which are around money, time, failure, and other people's opinions. And so it really works you through some prompts to help you figure out what those fears are stemming from, and then how to break them down and reframe your thoughts to something that's actually going to serve you in this next chapter.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds amazing. I feel like really good about what you're talking about, and that you're able to help women the way you do, and give them all of the encouragement they can get for overcoming all of those different challenges, and actually taking that leap at some point in their life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's it for this episode. It's been wonderful having you on the show, Chloe. And I will put all the information in the show notes about her website and all of the other details. And so then you can learn more about her there. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks so much, Aaron.